But I think you said it right. You're just about taking action. I think a bird learns how to fly when it steps off that perch and just has to spread the wings, man. And you know what? And those wings work.
Hey, Renter Retires, it's Adam Schrader here with another episode, joined as usual by Zach Lemaster, the CEO of Rent to Retirement. And we have a guest with us today. It's Iven Vian. He is the co-founder and COO of Anthem Capital. Ivan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Excited to get started.
So you and Zach have a bit in common. You're both Air Force veterans. So tell us a little bit, obviously in the Air Force, you started investing in real estate. What led you to even get started? Was it like a house hack at first, or what did you start with?
Honestly, my investing experience started with losing $24,000 in the stock market when I was a young second lieutenant in the Air Force. The Air Force, USA came to the Air Force Academy when I was a student there and convinced us to take this 3.5% interest loan and go invest it in the stock market that's earning 10% and I can keep the difference. Well, I did exactly what they told me. Of course, I'll take full responsibility, but I did what I thought I was supposed to do. And then unfortunately that investment went to zero overnight. And then I was stuck with the $425 monthly payment on a second lieutenant income to have to pay off that loan for the next 4 years. And let me tell you, every time I was making that payment, it's just like a dagger in the heart each time I had to write that check, paying off that debt. So I was like, man, there's got to be a better way to put your hard-earned money to work for you versus you have to go work for it. And that's when I started learning about other investment type opportunities outside of the stock market, because I just got burned and started learning about investing in hard assets like owning a single family house. And that's kind of where the interest started. But how I got my first investment, I was getting relocated, fast forward now to 2007 timeframe. So 6 or 7 years later, get relocated to Abilene, Texas, to be down at Dallas Air Force Base. And my mother-in-law, where I was staying at the time, said, hey, there's this lady going through a divorce down the street. She's trying to sell her house. I know you want to get into maybe real estate investing. Maybe you see if you can go buy her house, And so I just literally dropped everything I had and walked down the street and knocked on this lady's door and introduced myself. And, I asked her a few questions and I said, hey, I heard you trying to sell your house. She's like, you want to buy it? And I said, sure. I said, how much? She's like, $33,000. I said, sold. And I just bought it right there. And it was like I got lucky because I didn't know about due diligence. I didn't understand CMA. I didn't understand, a 2% deal, 1% deal, kind of from a DSCR standpoint. I got lucky and I rented that house for $850. I only had to put $4 or $5K into it. The same bank that told me to invest my money in the stock market did give me a 90% leverage loan at the time. And I was all in, out of pocket, maybe $10,000, and I got my first rental property. And man, I got hooked. I was like, wow, this is cool. I'm making $300 some bucks a month. And maybe this is
that almost pays for that $425 payment.
There you go. Maybe that's why they gave me the loan or the money to buy that house to pay off that debt.
Man, there's a lot to unpack there. Ivan, thanks for sharing your story. And just out of curiosity, so $33K house. I mean, what did you turn around and did you have to put renovations into that? Did you turn around and rent it? Did you move into it? What did you do with it?
Yeah, the lady moved on. I had to just rehab the house a little bit. She actually had a pretty good condition. I got lucky there as well. I had to do a little bit of paint, touch up paint, new blinds, new fixtures, some new tile, I think, in the bathroom. And that was it.
What did it rent for? Or did you sell it? Did you flip it?
I rented it for $800. I think at the time, this is 2008, maybe $850 a month.
Now, how are you managing it?
Self-managed. So I just quickly self-taught myself how to do it. And everything was on Craigslist. So I would list it on Craigslist and get leads that way. And I got it rented like within a month. I rented quick.
I mean, Adam, your analysis is probably accurate. It probably paid for that loan payment plus some, right? I mean, that's just and I love that. You basically, yes, you got lucky, but you also you took action, and that's a beautiful thing, at least in my mind, about real estate. Is, man, sometimes you can have no idea what you're doing, but at least you're doing something, and you do have sometimes these home runs, right? Like I think that's just we've seen that time and time again with our investing. And sometimes you lose money, right? But you learn, and it's just part of the process. But sometimes you have these, we're starting to call them lottery ticket properties, where they, you don't expect it when you go into it, but they turn out to be a home run type of deal. And then you have a bunch of others that are base hits, and ultimately it just drives you further down your path. But let's back up a little bit. So Air Force Academy, excellent. Are you pilot, or what did you do in the Air Force?
Yeah, I guess that airplane I flew is on the background right there. You can see it.
What'd you fly?
The B-1 bomber.
Oh, that's awesome, man. So ever in North Dakota at all? I think they had B-1 in
South Dakota. Yeah, I was in North Dakota's B-52s, South Dakota's B-1s.
Okay, I was stationed at Grand Forks, where they had the KC-135s, the refuelers, and then now that's the Global Hawk, our RPAs. But we need to start calling you sir, actually, and saluting, because you retired as a lieutenant colonel, right? You did your full 20 or
full 20? Yeah, full 20. Yeah, but don't call me.
I love it. Did you ever use a VA loan? That's kind of how I started with, that's a huge benefit to military members.
Yeah, the VA loan for sure. You learn how to leverage that, the 0%, down payment piece. You do have to pay a little premium still, though, right, to get that loan, especially if you use it more than once. But I definitely started learning how to leverage that loan. Every opportunity, every time I bought a house, I always looked for an investment house. I found a way to make quicker money, so I buy it at a discount, and that was a way I was able to build capital as I was getting transferred around during my career.
I love that. That's fantastic. Go ahead, Adam.
You talked about how you got lucky with your first deal, getting that 33 grand, only having to put in 4 to 5 grand. So where you are today, looking back, just from the beginning with where you were, would you be willing to buy that house today? Just whenever you first knocked on the door, obviously you can do more due diligence, but is that still a deal that you'd look at and go, yep, that's a deal I'd still take today?
I would still buy that deal today. I would buy that deal. No kidding.
Well, you probably can't for $33,000. We know that much. But
I sold it. I sold it about, I don't know, 10 years later for about $70,000, $80,000 or something after that. So yeah,
that's cool.
Nice.
So so you did well with this first one. It was kind of just jumping right into it because the opportunity kind of fell in your lap, and that was your initial entry point into real estate. But okay, you got the bug, positive cash flow for sure. What's next on your story here? How did you continue to stay engaged and scale up?
Yeah, interesting part of the story though. So the next deal, I didn't do so well.
Mom didn't introduce you to the right person the second time?
No, and I introduced myself to the wrong person. So basically the next deal was this abandoned house next to the house that I just moved into. So here I am, I got my first rental property. I got this bug, move into this house, and next to me is this boarded up house. And I was kind of busy with getting moved in, getting settled, starting my new job. And my wife was pregnant with our first child, right? And so anyhow, it was one of those deliveries where we quickly had to get to the hospital and left the bag at the home. So we're at the hospital, she finished the delivery. She said, go home and get the bag. So I go back home to get the bag, and I'm walking out the front door with the bag in my hand. I look to the left. I was like, oh yeah, there's this house. Like finally I have enough headspace to acknowledge there's this house there. And I was like, I wonder who owns that house.
You didn't tell your wife about this story until like much later down the fact.
She's at the hospital, and I look at my watch. It's like, you know what? She's sleeping right now. I have some time, and the work, they give you 2 weeks of time off. So I was like, let me see if I can get lucky again. And I got on the tax roll, found out who the owner was, realized he lived just down the street. So same thing, went down to his house, knocked on the door. Said, hey, sir, I see you. I think you own this house next to me. He said, yeah, I do. He goes, what do you want? I was like, I'm interested in buying it. He said, well, step inside. So I step inside his house, and I go up this stairway up into his attic, this darkened stairway. And I go up into this darkened attic room, which I'm like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? And it was like this one little light hanging from the top of the ceiling there, shining on this like piece of paper, which is the note he had from the bank. It was like this piece of paper. He said, see right there, I owe the bank $75,000. If you want to buy it, you got to pay me $75,000. I said, okay, sold. And so I bought that house. Again, I didn't do a CMA. I didn't do a comp study. I didn't do any analysis. I said, I'll make it happen. I did some quick back in the napkin. I think it's going to cost this much to fix it up, blah, blah, blah. Buy the house to get another bank to support me on that. I go in, I start renovating, and I said it's going to cost $20,000. Ended up costing like $65,000 plus. And I went in the hole. I went in massive debt because I over rehabbed it, and it took longer than I expected. Had to put
That never happens though.
Right, never. I
Just a one-off.
Put in a brand new sewer system, and that house is pristine. I was in debt and I was sweating, right? And my mom had to help me out. I had to go in credit card debt, and then I had to confess to my wife.
And she was like, "You should have just remembered the bag in the first place."
I know. She just left the house, come to the hospital, you wouldn't find. And but man, that was like a blessing in disguise. I learned so much about, you know what, I need to figure out where I went wrong. And it's by happenstance, we were driving back from Dallas to Abilene, listening to AM radio. And there's this radio show called Lifestyles Unlimited Radio Show by Dale Walmsley.
Yep.
And
I produced that show for a couple of years.
All right. Okay.
Yep.
So here I am listening. It's like, oh my God, honey, they're talking about real estate. Da, da, da. I was like, I got to go to that conference. So eventually I convinced her to let me go to this conference. And then I spent the 2 days. I was like, oh my God, I see everywhere I went wrong. I need to sign up for your program. Let's start over and rethink this whole thing. And that I got an education. I got a mentor. I got the tools, tips, and tactics of how to invest smartly in real estate. Although now I'm in debt, I don't have any money left for a while, and I had to start saving up again. I learned a lot. And that experience gave me a lot that I still use today.
And probably, even though, it was a stressful time, like I think probably you can attest to this, when you're thrown into those situations, it's like you got to sink or swim, right? You have to figure it out. But during that process, you're developing these tools that will allow you to go on and be more successful and apply these, the things that you've learned. So it's all part of the process, right?
It is, exactly. And, you got these analysis paralysis kind of thinkers, and then you have these action taker kind of thinkers. Maybe somewhere in the middle is the right place to be, right? But I think you said it right. You're just about taking action. I think a bird learns how to fly when it steps off that perch and has to spread the wings, man. And you know what? And those wings work. When you step off, they always work, as long as you keep at it, right?
Yeah. So you mentioned over rehabbing. What did you learn in regards to the actual rehab? Like, what kind of things did you do that you look back and you're like, man, I'm an idiot for doing that? Like, what do you mean when you say over rehab? I mean, what did you do that was an over rehab?
Yeah. It depends on what the highest best use desire is for that property. I wanted to rent it, right? What I did was I ended up rehabbing it, and I basically made it a home for me to live in, but not to rent. So what did I do? I actually moved into the house and rented the one I was in next door, and I made a return on that house over here, this one I lived in. So that's how I was able to kind of flip it around and still do okay from a rental standpoint. So over rehab from a rental standpoint, I put in brand new cabinets. Everything was ripped to the studs and built back up. I mean, there was plywood showing, and that shiplap walls back in the day, plaster walls. And then I had to take all the plaster off, and there's a lot of dump fees there. I should have just painted it versus ripped all the plaster off and put sheetrock up, for example. On the flooring, I put in brand new, like nice hardwood flooring. I should have put in vinyl plank flooring. On the paint, I used oil-based paint versus regular enamel entry-grade paint, things like that, right? Electrical, I didn't know that it had, what's that?
The old knob and tube?
Yes. Cheesecloth was around the wires, I think, kind of material. It was like old school wiring from like the original 50s, right? It was a 1920s house, and maybe the 30s, somewhere around there, and I had to redo all the electrical. I should have caught that. I put in the whole gas line. You have to check the gas lines. You can blow them. You can test them out and make sure they don't leak. The daggum gas line leaked. It didn't work. I had to get a brand new gas line. That was like X number of $1,000 at the time. So like you got to do inspections, right, before you buy something, so you understand what the true costs are and where the hidden gremlins are that are going to reach out and bite you when you least expect it, right? And so those are some of the examples things that I learned in that experience.
I mean, most certainly that sounds like an over rehab for a rental property, because that would lead to a very expensive tenant turn, I think.
Yeah, and the comps and the rents didn't support that for me to make any type of profit on my loan at the time, right? And so, like I said, I decided to move in it and rented the one next door, and I had a little better loan terms. Wasn't as leveraged on that one, so I did have a little bit of cash flow on the one next door.
Just real quickly on the acquisition of this one. So the guy was essentially, the scenario was a distressed seller and a creepy addict where, we're glad you made it out of that. But I don't know what would have happened if you didn't agree to buy the property. But what is the so he was back on taxes by 75,000, or he was behind on payments? Was he in foreclosure?
No, he wasn't in foreclosure. So I later learned by reading through the lines, he got a $75,000 credit securitized by that house, that then he in turn used that money to go and buy other investment properties and flip and make money on that $75,000 credit. So he didn't actually technically owe all of that, because it was a pool of cash. He made me think, the way he positioned the whole scenario, that he owes the bank $75,000. In actuality, he had that money invested in other properties, had equity built up, or
I see
flips going on in other properties. So that pissed me off. And I didn't catch that beforehand. So I should have bought that house. It was a bread box, man. It was boarded up bread box. I should have paid $25,000 for it, dude. And I paid 75 for this thing, right?
Well, like you said, we live and we learn, and it's your acquisition strategy is just knocking on doors. So
at that time, not anymore though. But yeah,
it works. Well, let's fast forward a little bit. I mean, definitely, certainly interesting stories with each one of these. I'm sure you're full of many of these. But kind of give us kind of a broad overview of, okay, you're getting your feet underneath you, you're learning, you went to the seminar, kind of gave you a little bit more of a strategic approach to buying real estate. What does the next kind of 5-10 years look like as you transitioned through your real estate?
Yeah, I just had this passion for real estate. I mean, here I am flying B-1 bomber, is one of the coolest jobs you can have in the world, in my opinion. And remember just flying in the sky, daydreaming about owning more real estate. And I was like, maybe I should do this as a full-time career. And, at that 2-day event, Lifestyles Unlimited, the second day teach you about owning apartments. And they introduced the idea of owning apartments. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I want to do. But at the time, I didn't have the belief system, knowledge, and know-how. And I didn't have the money to pay for the next levels, another $10K to go do apartments, right? And that was a lot of money. I remember sweating that $10K. I was like, no way I can afford that right now. So I didn't go down the apartment path. But I wanted to do it. And so I basically set my sights on, somehow I want to get an apartment someday. Fast forward, I moved to Oklahoma City now. I start over. I moved to Oklahoma City, and I saved up a bunch of money now, and I could hit the ground running and start buying single family homes. Again, not believing it or knowing how I could get apartments, but with the goal in mind. And I had this passion, someday I want to do this. And so I'm buying up houses. I ran out of money after 4 homes. A broker said, get your license. And my broker gave me a first client. And he and I just hit it off. And it's crazy. I got my license. My broker didn't really teach me anything or train me to go sell houses. Just kicked me out the door. I barely knew how to log in the MLS. I think I was finding houses on Zillow and then learning how to work that super key to get in the house. I was like, oh my God, how do I do this? But I knew how to deconstruct problems and teach them to people. And my first client, who's my business partner today, caught on real quick. And everything changed at that moment. Fast forward, I was selling homes on my lunch break and after work around the military base I was at in Oklahoma City. And I ended up selling about 99 houses in 2 years. And that was a game changer for me. I took those 99.
Was this retail or to investors? Were you working with them?
I was an investor realtor. So it was a way different game. I was representing 5 different clients. They're my buyers. And I never wanted to compete against them. So I made sure everyone was full and no one wanted an investment property. Then I'd go find me a deal. So I was a deal hunter, man. I knew how to get deals, and I was very good at it.
Still door knocking, or how did you change your acquisition?
So I got a license, and I basically knew understood some of the algorithms that the asset managers holding these foreclosures at the time were using. And I could time my offers based upon how the activity I was observing on the market. This is old strategy stuff. You get on HUDhomes.go or whatever, HomePath and all those sites. This is where I was finding a lot of these. There was all these REOs in 2013, right? And I would notice if the house wasn't moving and it was getting towards the end of a quarter, that asset manager would most likely lower the price about 8 to 10% of the list price, because they have to push product to get it off their balance sheet to get ready for the next quarter and to show that they're moving houses, right? And I was able to time this, especially on the HUD Home site, where if it wasn't moving, I knew if I offered, say, like 10%, it would probably go for 8% less, and that was still within the buy box criteria, and I'd pick up the home. And that's kind of one strategy that I would use. The other strategy, early bird gets the worm. These are abandoned houses or foreclosed homes. I would go in at 6:30 in the morning. I had this process. I would take pictures on my phone. I had an iPad, but I did take all these pictures and I would put them in an iCloud link and I blast it to my investors. And they would just look at it on the iCloud link, and a lot of them would make offers sight unseen, just looking at how much it would cost from the pictures. So I would look at the house in the morning and be under contract that night. And that was how I was able to kind of burn through and get through a lot of these opportunities during that time. It's a totally different market today. I mean, that was just a tremendous opportunity, buying houses, again, 35, 45, 50,000 bucks at it when they were all in around 80 to 100K at the time.
So tell us a little bit, when did you realize that you had reached the point where you didn't need a day job? You were a full-time investor. You could, leave the Air Force and you had enough income. Kind of, when did you realize that, and how did that shift kind of what you did on a day-to-day basis, and kind of what was your mindset then?
Yeah. So we started investing in apartments 2016. I got out of the single family game and joined a mentorship program, learned the game, got into apartments, hit the ground running. And 9 months into it, we bought a 3-property portfolio, 214 units total. 9 months after that, a 111 unit, then a 126, then a 210, and it kept buying. And here I am having all these apartments, and now I'm getting out of the investor realtor role, property management role, construction management role. I'm an asset manager. I'm overseeing an operation of apartments. And it takes a while to build a book of business on apartments, because it takes a while for them to start making money. But when they start selling, that's when everything changed. That's when I realized this is real. Because when you sell an apartment, the upside on that deal, when it performs well, based upon how you structure the return waterfall structure, those checks are pretty significant. And when you're getting 4 or 5 sells, because we started buying, I've bought 19 of these and sold 14 now. When you start selling these, that's when you get pretty good rapid capital gains there on your time, basically. And I was like, wow, this is real. Now, honestly, though, it took about 4 or 5 years of going at it until I was making significant money for me to be comfortable to be able to do this on my own and still have enough in savings to allow me to have the time now to focus on this business on a full-time basis. And
so would you basically transition to do just kind of the value add type of scenario with small or mid-sized multifamily? It sounds like that was kind of your transition. I mean, what would a typical deal look like?
Yeah, they were value add multifamily deals. One of still my favorite deals was called the Eleanor in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 110 unit property. It was a value add. Original owner, he owned it for 30 plus years, built it with his own hands. The manager lived on site for 20 plus years at that point in time. She's still there today. Bought it for $33,000 a door, 2017, was it? $33,000 a door. And later sold that 4 years later for $65 a door. What did we do? Well, you got to look at the loss to lease built in on the rent roll. One, the same owner, a lot of owners are focused on physical. They want physical at 99% for whatever reason. Typically, the sweet spot's 95%. We realized if we just raise the rents, we can get to that 95% and max perform this property. And we realized we didn't have to do much interior rehab to get a 95% physical occupancy, but maximum economic occupancy, maximum top dollar revenue overall for this asset. But one big thing that we did is we converted the common space. There's a huge common area that wasn't being utilized, and it was dated, quite honestly, stuck in the 70s. So it's kind of an eyesore. But what we did is we turned that common area into a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, wash and dryer unit. We spent about $35,000 and rented that unit for $900 a month. In the real estate apartment world, this thing called forced appreciation, right? So the property didn't go up by $900 a month. It went up by the capitalization of $900 a month. So it went up around $150K overall based upon the cap rate at the time. So I turned that $33,000, $35,000 cost into $150,000 value just by that one unit. That's an example of value add, how you add value.
I love that. Just little things with that's the economies of scale, right? With multifamily, which is, as you mentioned, valued based on the income of the property relative to where cap rates are at in that market at that point in time. But if you have these little tweaks, right? And that's, I would say, common with an owner operator that's had it forever. I mean, sometimes they're not the most conscious about keeping market rents where they need to be and being aggressive. They just, property's doing fine and I like the tenants, and but to have someone really come in there with the vision, sometimes just a little tweak in rents across 110 units or whatever, that makes a huge difference. I love that. And of course, real creative on turning that common space into an income producing unit, and then also additional income from, I think you said, washer and dryer, right? So that's super cool. Let me ask you about this, Ivan, because you touched briefly on joining courses and paying for education and mentorships and programs, which is great. I've done that a lot in my past as well, and continue to do. But there's so many gurus out there too that sometimes you get into this. I mean, the same thing with turnkey, but there's a lot of gurus out there that have like high dollar amount courses, which sometimes are conflicting with having like true value. I mean, what would you say to someone that's considering looking at a potential course, right, or a seminar type of scenario or mentorship that they're going to pay for? How do they know that it's legitimate, and how do they join the right one? And do you think that's worth it? Do you contribute your success or attribute your success back to what you learned in those courses?
Yeah, absolutely. So it does shorten the timeline. And I joined to get multifamily. I joined a course at the time, and you get access to the ecosystem where you're invited to the toolbox that you need to go build out this business you want to build. It's still up to you to execute is the thing. And that's the key that I think a lot of people miss, that it doesn't happen for you. You have to go make it happen, but they give you some of the tools that you need to go make it happen. And so I didn't see that as an expense. I did see it as an investment to join the mentorship group that I did. And not only that, it gave me access to people that I wanted to surround myself with, who are farther along the path than I am, and allow them to influence my life and to give me a new and better mindset that I needed to be able to operate at that level in this kind of business. And so I'm still a member of this group because just that, to be around like-minded people that will constantly motivate me and challenge me and want me to grow, and a place for me to add value to myself. What I would say though, before I join, I always take my time before I join anything. I'm never the guy that on the spot. I feel like I ask a lot of questions. I went and found all these people who are in the group, and I want to hear about their experience and the people that were successful and the outcome and how they're able to achieve their results. And then I found other like-kind mentorship groups, and I wavered and considered that. And I wanted to understand what it was like. Lifestyles Unlimited, the one that I thought I was going to join back in the day, what it was like to join that one, what was the outcome of that. And then I evaluate the person. I try to see if this person is truly a genuine individual, if they really care about your success and are going to deliver on what they say they're going to deliver. And so that to me is how I approached it. Let me tell you, I mean, my investment today is I got 1,000+X return on my investment. At the time when I joined back then, it was around $18,000. I'm not that cheap anymore these days, And
I just want to remind everyone that this is also, then that's great. That's great information on how to vet a course, potentially talk to other people. But I do want to remind everyone this comes from Ivan, who also knocks on doors and buys houses, and the first person that opens the door. But no, that's important, and I love the point that you made about it. Like, it's up to you. Like, the reality is, in my opinion, a lot of people blame the education industry or courses like, it's not worth it, it's too expensive. It's like, the tools are there, and most certainly if there's a community that you can tap into, that's huge. Your network is your net worth, but it's really up to you regardless. Like, you take a few nuggets of those, and it's up to you to determine how you're going to put that into action. So I love that.
Yeah. So Ivan, how do you know, like, there's a ton of apartment complexes out there. A lot of them are not performing at their, highest and best use. So when you go around, what do you look for in these to know, okay, this one is actually a good candidate for a value add, and this one is just potentially a lost cause? And then what are some of the small things that you do inside of those units that gets the highest return on investment?
Yeah. So what I do, first, you got to know what your buy box is, what your criteria is, so you can kind of narrow your focus to a certain asset class B, class C, class A, right? And then maybe you want to know minimum number of units, say 100 units or 75 is usually the break-even point for bringing in a third-party property management company. So you kind of have a more narrow focus. And not only that, you want to focus on an MSA or two, not get too spread out on multiple essays. So, for example, just focus on Dallas, Texas, and go hard at it. And you got to get a few layers down into the understanding of these MSAs, these submarkets, to truly understand how to underwrite a deal. And then now you have deal flow coming in, and you're seeing all these potential opportunities. I tell you what, from a cost per door basis, I just first thing I always ask, what's the whisper price? And from a high level, I kind of know what the caps are, what things are trading for, and then I can quickly go look at the NOI and see if maybe I have a potential opportunity there, right? But then as you start digging in, you want to understand what's the story. And the story is always, you understand markets and all of these deals from top down, but to underwrite a deal, you got to understand it from ground up. So then you have to understand the story, right? There's back of the napkin analysis that you do to do your initial underwriting. But if you really want to dig in, then you have to understand the story. What's the comps? What are the rental comps doing? What kind of interior improvement plan do they have to achieve the type of rents that they have? Why are they selling the property? Is there any operational inefficiencies? Maybe they ran out of CapEx money. Maybe they are over levered, or maybe it's a mom and pop operation. There's still those left out in this market, not as many as it was, 6 or 7, 10 years ago, but there's still some mom and pop operators out there that you can bring in some operational efficiency by just bringing a more tuned professional property management company. So you understand it from that perspective. You look at the physical needs of a property. A lot of times there's deferred maintenance where you have major CapEx needs like a roof, parking lot, plumbing, boiler, chiller, all of those type of things. You got to understand what is the health and condition and lifelong, how much life value does it have left before you have to maybe repair it or replace it, which has a huge impact in your overall underwriting model, right? And when you start doing this over time in a certain submarket, you can kind of quickly then accelerate that process. It gets quicker and quicker and quicker every time you do it because you understand that market. You've already kind of investigated. You know where all the properties are. You know what's going on with each of these properties. And now you're kind of in tune with the market. And now you kind of know and pick up which ones are going to be deals, which ones are not going to be deals.
You most certainly have developed your process in place, and that's just, as you mentioned, it's just recycling that again and again, both in the evaluation, the underwriting, and the value add, and the disposition. It's just building your process and then repeating it. Of course, markets change, and you just got to be dynamic in your acquisition. But one thing I want to talk about is your transition from single family to multifamily. Do you feel that was beneficial? And what are a few key points that you took from your single family to multifamily kind of journey? And do you feel that that's necessary to start in the single family space and then transition to multifamily?
I don't at all. I think if you want to be it depends on where you are and how much capital you have. I mean, it takes a certain level of initial basis to get going in the business, right? If you have 25, it's challenging. If you don't have much, you need some capital because you got to put skin in the game if you want to become a general partner and own and operate a deal, right? But again, what was my transition like from single family to multifamily? I remember one of the challenges I had is now I have a single family portfolio and I'm building up some cash flow. I'm like doing okay on cash flow. And I remember wrestling with the idea of selling all that cash flow off and starting over. And I had a hard time with that idea. And it was like a challenge, but to get to the apartments, I had to sell a portfolio because that was where my equity, my capital was too, right? A lot of my equity and capital.
Did you 1031 any of those?
Explore that idea, but a 1031 into a syndication is a very challenging process and there's a lot of execution risk there, or exposure where if you agree to it, not everyone, agrees to it. Now you're in a deal and you're under contract, it may not close. So you're exposing yourself that you can lose some hard money. So I decided not to, but it's okay because especially now in today's current tax environment, the tax code environment, especially if you're in a full-time real estate investor, and we can unpack this a little bit. I didn't 1031, but I sold off all my homes in portfolio. These investors, I sold at a little bit of discount too. I tried the onesie twosie thing, and I have my own license. I can sell one or two at a time, but I was like, that's going to take a long time. And I want access to my capital. So I gave a discount, about a 10% discount to market to hand over my portfolio traded my portfolio over to someone else. And then I have all this capital. Now I have then I have a tax event that took place, right? And I depreciated those homes. My adjusted cost basis is way down here. When I sold them up here, I had to recoup that basis. So my capital gain is pretty significant. However, now I'm out investing in all these properties. And all these properties, you can accelerate the depreciation. Right now, you can accelerate the depreciation where you can offset your tax liability from the selling of these single family by the depreciation on the acquiring of these multifamily properties. And this year we have 80% bonus depreciation available, where if you're full-time real estate investors, consult your CPA to get the true facts about this. But from my understanding, which I have been implementing my own businesses myself, or my own investments, I should say, if you put $100,000 investment, you get a K1 that says negative 80,000. You have 80% accelerated depreciation on your investment, a paper loss. So you can offset your tax liability that way. And that's what I did to offset my tax liability from my single family to multifamily. And someone may ask the question, well, some point you're going to have to realize that, right? Unless you keep staying in the game, right?
Unless you don't,
just keep staying in the game. And that's the whole idea, is building up enough passive income by keeping your money reinvesting into this arena or any type of asset classes now in this world to not have to pay that tax burden. And there's other more sophisticated ways I'm not going to get into, and I don't quite fully understand, but I know that there's other instruments and tools to still be able to mitigate your tax in the event you fully want to get out of something.
That's the beautiful thing about real estate is the tax benefits that we have available to us. And most certainly, as Adam knows, my favorite. And I think really, if you want to learn how to get ahead in your investing, like just learn how to play the tax game. That's our biggest expense, right? And most other investments do not have the same benefits that real estate offers in many different formats, right? And it's a beneficial thing for the economy. I mean, the IRS will continue to offer these things because we as investors are out there stimulating the economy. And really, they write the tax code based on what they want investors and people that are building and rehabbing to do. So like that stuff's not going away. It was interesting, as Adam knows, I'm sending him emails at midnight last night, like, oh, check, I just discovered Chat GPT. And we're using it to write like some blog stuff. And, because AI is just better than all of my writing style and Adam's as well. So, but I'm sending him all these things. And one of the things I looked up is like, tell me the 100 best things. And I asked this in a ton of different ways, the 100 best things about real estate investing and all these different things about like the benefits. And there's always the top one, at least for ChatGPT, was tax benefits. There's always tax benefits. So it's just a beautiful thing. But going back to the single family to multifamily transition, I think that while someone doesn't necessarily need that experience, I personally think that if you're a newer investor, like small multifamily or single family is a great place to start. It's usually more attainable. it does give you the ability to have some track record and experience where you're not maybe at as high a risk. And this is different than putting money like in a syndication for, this is if you're owning physical real estate. And I think that is a path that a lot of us follow to then eventually kind of trade up into larger assets. And of course, if you're owning them, you could potentially 1031, run a cost seg, at least for right now, as you mentioned, Ivan, super beneficial. But that's a path a lot of people follow. And, that's a great way to just keep scaling up. Going through the tax benefits and 1031s is really what's allowed us to scale over time. So super
Absolutely.
interesting.
Let me touch on that a little bit on deal size. Okay. I'm kind of having a different perspective now after gone through this for a while and done about 3,000 doors. So, and the way I think is I want to buy big monster properties, 300 unit, 400 unit, or 100 units at the time was a monster property, 75 units of monster property. Well, the thing is, when you buy these monster properties, unless you're well capitalized, you have a big balance sheet, you're going to have to bring on co-GPs, partners to help take down these assets. Most likely, a lot of people I know that they all partner, or they have some type of significant balance sheet partner in the deal. Regardless, all those people in the GP pool now have their own piece to the pie. So yeah, you're getting a bigger asset. You have to go through all this work and these mechanics, but you take a certain percentage of a big pie, a small percentage of a big pie. Whereas I have people I know that they came in a deal on their own. Instead of buying 100 units, they bought 10, 15, 20, 25 units. It's not as cost effective to do property management. Maybe took on the burden of property management, and that is a challenge in of itself. I get it, but listen, now you're the sole breadwinner of a small pie, but you take 100% of a small pie, and that 100% of a small pie, I've heard many, many times over, is a lot bigger return on your time and your investment than the small percentage of a big pie, in the tune of millions and millions of dollars of these small assets. I mean, these guys buy these small assets in Dallas for like 4 or 5 mil, and they'll sell it for 10, 15 mil. They made 5 million swing on something, and we're the only owner. I would have done that deal more than I would have done the 100, 150, 250 deals.
That was the door he wished he knocked on.
Exactly.
all 15.
Exactly. So there's an opportunity there. And then back to your point, Zach, for people that want to kind of step in, and I would recommend getting a partner, though. I didn't touch on that. Partnership is key. Partner with people have been there, done that. It could lead me on my way. Even the smaller deal, my first few deals, no matter what it is, I'm going to be partner with somebody, so I don't have to make the same mistakes they did, right? Anyhow, but there's a play to be had in those smaller deals because not as many people are looking at them. There's less competition. I think you'll be able to find some better opportunities out there in today's market.
Yeah. Well, that leads us into our rapid fire questions that we want to throw your way. So, just quick answers to these. Where's the market 1 year from now?
Market 1 year from now, you're going to see, right now it's tight, not much deal flow. You're going to see now all of the ones that are struggling, they're going to be on the market. Not all of them, quite a few will be on the market, or they'll be trading, where you're going to scoop up some opportunities because banks are going to be holding these properties, or they're going to be going into, foreclosure status, unfortunately. And so I think you're going to see some of those properties and opportunities on the market.
Or people that bought their properties with a low interest rate that has a balloon payment that's due in the next few years, and all of a sudden their interest payment's way higher, going to be in trouble.
Exactly.
My question would be, with the military background, for someone that's newer in the military or is in the military for a few years, what are some things they can do while in the military to position themselves to be a successful investor during their time and after service?
Yeah, education, 100%. Education and network. And man, with computer, these digital means, they're so easy to network. I mean, you don't have to leave your desk. You can network with anyone in the world very fast. I would focus on getting educated, go to the local meetups too, get connected in your community, wherever you want to go to the masterminds and the meetings. I used to drive to Dallas 9 times a year when I was in the military to stay connected. That way, and you can get started and maybe partner with people as well. I'm not saying you have to wait. Obviously, I didn't wait. I found a way to make it work. Also, to go down the path I did, if you want to be an active investor, general partner, this is a full-time gig and job. there's some career decisions and personal life decisions you have to make along the way. And being in the military, a lot of people want to go down the commander path or chief master, be the leadership path. That's a very demanding job. And that requires a lot of you and focus, and because as it should. Now, I didn't go down that path because I knew what I wanted to be here, and I wanted to build a portfolio on the side, right? And so I didn't volunteer for all the jobs, and maybe I wasn't the go-to guy or whatever as the golden child in the military, which is okay, right? Which is okay. I still served and I still did my time. So, like, you have to come to terms with yourself by understanding what it is you truly want. That answer, you have to be honest with yourself in that question to yourself. That will determine a lot about the course, how you go about this business, if this is what you want to do. I came to terms with it. I struggled with it for a number of years. I thought I wanted both, and I tried to do both. Yeah, I'm going to be commander, and I'm going to do real estate. I can do it all, and then, I have a mental breakdown as a result, right? Or I'm not the best human being to be around because I'm so stressed out. I'm going all these different directions, man. There's no way to live, right? There's no way. We do this really so we can have fulfillment in life.
All right. And what market are you most excited to invest in right now? It sounds like you're investing in Dallas, but what market excites you the most right now?
Yeah, Dallas has always been a great market, right? And there's still opportunities in that market. We're finding some opportunities in Kansas City, and I'm in Salt Lake City as well. I want to get down to Atlanta. I've been trying to get into Atlanta for quite some time. In the outskirts of Atlanta, I've been seeing a lot of opportunities on the outskirts, a lot of tremendous growth. I was just there a couple of weeks ago, and anytime you see cranes in cities and roads widening and dirt flying around, that's a good sign that that's the market to be in. So I want to expand out in the Atlanta area.
We found great success in those secondary markets outside of metropolitan areas. Union City outside of Atlanta has been a good one for us. Real quick, just favorite B-1 story. Let's hear it.
Oh my gosh. Favorite B-1 story. Yeah. So I think the interesting thing is, I think maybe people have this perception because of the movies that when we're up there flying around, it's all business and no fun, and quite honestly, like flying, especially even in combat, it's like hours of boredom interrupted by sheer moments of fear and excitement. So what are you doing to kill time in those hours? Passing by as you're watching movies, you're telling stories, crazy stories. You're having crazy questions like, what would you do for $1 million? And you can come up with some crazy questions like, would you do this for $1 million? You would? That's crazy, right?
What's your call sign?
Odd job. So,
okay.
I mean, like the younger generation doesn't even know about the old James Bond movies. There's this Asian-looking guy named Odd Job who threw that top hat. Yeah. So I had a top hat, and I would wear it in my plane and put the headphones over my plane and wear the top hat. It's I still got it in my office somewhere. But yeah, it was Odd Job, man. It's like, one time I got you always remember your first. You always remember your first of everything, right? Your first kiss, whatever, your first rental property you bought, first apartment. Well, I remember my first combat engagement, and that was an interesting one where I was so committed because I was waiting to get my chance, and there's this firefight going on the ground, and some Brits are getting an engagement with the Taliban, and I was running out of gas. I was calling in asking for a tanker, and Op said there's no tanker available, and I was like running the scenario around. I was like, well, I'll go below reserves, and if I have to land in a foreign country to get this engagement over with, I'm going to land in this foreign country. Meanwhile, there's these A-10s over here soaking around, and they're trying to get in on the fight and take the fight over from me. Like, hey, hand it off. I was ignoring them. And so, because I wanted to get my first out of the way, anyhow, go through the whole engagement and ended up being a success. But now I had to get home, and I looked down at my gas tank. I was doing the math. I was like, oh my God, I think I'm not going to make it home. What do I do? And I'm calling back home. I'll let them know what's up. And I was like, this is what's probably going to happen. But I ended up climbing as high as I possibly can. And the higher you go, the more fuel efficient your plane becomes. such that you can kind of glide down to the airbase. And lo and behold, I get over the country I thought I was going to land in, and come to find out I had enough gas to get home. I made up for it somehow. I was like, yes. All right, get back home. I can sleep in my bed tonight, get a beer, and talk about how I could have done this better, and talk about my first,
Yeah, man. That's awesome.
But the next part of the story is I land and I pull into the chocks. My commander's waiting for me with his arms crossed. He says, step inside. I need to talk to you. Basically, I went in his office and he ripped me a new one. Don't you effing do that ever again. You almost caused an international incident. I need you to be smarter. You should have handed off to the A-10s next time. I was like, yes, sir.
Now that I got the first one out.
But I got the first one out of the way. Exactly. So there's your story. Yeah.
You made it home. I love it. That's awesome.
What's your favorite metric when you're evaluating a deal?
Favorite metric when I'm evaluating a deal from a valuation standpoint, I mean, people talk about caps, what you're trading for, what kind of asset class is cap, but there's so much that goes on to a cap rate. Return on investment, what's your overall IRR, how much horsepower is behind that return on investment at the end of the day, and a cost per door basis is kind of where I start to evaluate deals more so than cap rate. Kind of gets you pointing the right trajectory, but return on investment is kind of the metric I use.
All right. And it sounds like we've pretty much heard your biggest wins and losses, but is there any other big win or big loss that sticks out in your head?
Yeah, last year we had 5 exits. In one deal, we did a 45% annualized return. Tremendous opportunity down in Lancaster, Texas, just south of Dallas. And what I love about these stories, these deals, did not come without adversity. This is a deal we picked up right before COVID. COVID hit, had a huge delinquency balance because of the COVID rules. We couldn't get people off the property. And we had a lot of challenges. And then we had a fire on the property. We had all these other things that happened. And we still sold that property, 45% total return. I mean, we advertised at an 18% return, and it was a complete grand slam. So to me, it was a huge win, and just gratifying to know that you can bring a team of people together and still overcome these obstacles and challenges and still get a home run.
That's what it's about: overcoming obstacles, solving problems, and then occasionally getting those lottery ticket properties. You only need a couple of them in life, maybe even one.
And so what's your biggest advice to someone who's sitting there thinking about investing, hasn't quite done it yet? What's your advice that you'd give them so that they're positioned better in 5 years than they are today?
I think we all kind of said on the show already: invest in yourself, get education, get mentorship, surround yourself with people already doing it, been there, done that. And then don't reinvent the wheel. Emulate what they did. Find those that are successful, emulate what they did, and then do it. Do it, right? And then you got to prioritize your life in order to be able to do it. And then you'll see the results happen. And they have to happen. They have to happen because you're doing it. You put in the time, put in the effort. And then keep believing in that too. Because, a lot of people, to get the first deal, maybe they had to strike out, 100 times to get that first one, but it will happen if you just stay at it.
Nice. Very nice. Now, you mentioned at the beginning you're the co-founder and COO of Anthem Capital. Tell us a little bit about your company and what y'all do.
Anthem Capital, yeah, we're a multifamily commercial real estate investment company. Essentially, what we do is we help people invest passively in real estate who are cash rich or time poor, that want to be able to go out and do the things that they're truly passionate about. The way they can do that is by earning passive income through real estate investment opportunities. We go out and operate properties. We're not just capital raisers. We're operators by trade and by my background, right? Obviously. And we go out and create community within communities. It's another huge thing we're passionate about. We're very passionate about creating community and improving not only ourselves, improving the lives of those that, helping those to improve the lives of those who invest with us, but improving the properties and all of the people that live in our properties and the surrounding communities as well.
All right, fantastic. And the website is anthemcp.com. That's anthemcp.com. Ivan, really appreciate you joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. For everybody else, if you're interested in seeing what we have to offer, you can go to renttoretirement.com. That's renttoretirement.com. We talked about some of the markets Ivan's excited about. But if you want to see what Zach's written about the top 20 markets to invest in 2023, you can send an email to podcast@renttoretirement.com, and we'll get that sent out to you. That's podcast@renttoretirement.com. Please leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you use. And if you email that screenshot to podcast@renttoretirement, we'll make sure to get you a $10 gift card and entered into a raffle for a $500 closing cost credit. That's podcast@renttoretirement.com. Thanks so much for taking the time to educate yourselves today, and we'll talk to you on the next episode.
Thanks for watching the Rent to Retirement YouTube channel. Check out some of our other videos, like this one, or this one here.